Hello, everyone. My name is Nic Brierre Aziz. I'm the Community Engagement Curator at the New Orleans Museum of Art. I'm here with Katie Pfohl, and we will be talking about the Bondye Between and Beyond exhibition that we had the chance to curate last year. This exhibition featured 14 Vodou sequined prayer flags made by artist Tina Girouard in collaboration with several notable Haitian sequin artists, including Edgar and Georges Valris. These flags were made in the 1990s during Tina's 5 to 6 years that she spent in Haiti. And these flags represent, each of them represent a spirit, or what they refer to as a loi within the Vodou religion. So as you can see on your screen, this particular flag was one example, and one that I think really spoke to me, particularly because of its significance. So this flag was Ogu, and Ogu is the loi that is believed to represent freedom and strength and power. And it is also believed that this particular loi possessed the enslaved Africans during the Haitian Revolution. So for those who are unaware, the Haitian Revolution began around a Vodou ceremony in 1791, August of 1791, and lasted nearly 13 years and resulted in Haiti becoming the first independent Black republic in the world in 1804, January 1st, 1804. And obviously, Haiti has a certain connotation now as being the quote unquote poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, but there have been a lot of different decisions and ramifications and literal and figurative debt that Haiti had to pay for achieving their freedom. But culturally, Haiti had so much significance on the rest of the Western Hemisphere post their revolution and post their liberation. And one of those prime examples is New Orleans, as a city that in 1809, nearly 10,000 Haitians came to New Orleans, doubling the size of the city, and with them bring things such as second lining, shotgun houses style. So a lot of these cultural fabrics that we celebrate in New Orleans were brought to us by these people from Haiti. This example is one that can be seen across different countries, such as Cuba or Colombia or Brazil even. So I think this exhibition was really powerful in the sense that it showed New Orleans a different side of itself and really dove into the influences of our culture. But also to exploring African spirituality practices, particularly Vodou in this case, as being one that has, unfortunately, because of different things, developed more negative connotations to it. And Vodou being also an example of a religion that has influenced others such as Candomblé and Santeria. So yeah, I think that's a little bit to start. Just to kind of kick us off, so Katie, as curator at NOMA, just curious what attached you to Tina and her story in this work?
Yeah, so I had known about Tina and her work since before I even moved to Louisiana about 5 years ago, and I had always been interested in her, not so much just as a Louisiana artist, but as an artist who was really working very outside the box for the kind of art being made in New York in the 60s and 70s and 80s. She was, at a time when many, mostly white male artists were making, very minimal cubes and working in this very conceptual way. She was like serving gumbo at this restaurant. There was this experimental place for artists in Soho. She was making all of these installations that would drape museums with fabric and sequins and beads. She was doing this performance and this dance that felt to me so totally different than what I understood to be art of that moment. And so, when I moved here, one of the first things that I did is try and look Tina up because I was so interested in her and her art. And at that time, I actually didn't know about the work she'd done in Haiti, but it quickly became apparent that some of the most amazing work that she had was this work that she had done in collaboration with these artists. And then it felt, in certain respects, kind of like kismet, because we'd found out about these works. her niece, Amy Bonwell, who's been amazing and helping Tina get a lot of her work out in the world and online, shared these with me. And that was right around the time that you started as our community engagement curator. And I found out about your interest in Haitian art. So it felt like this kind of amazing moment of collaboration to really think about what these flags are and what they mean and what they can teach us about art of the time being made in the 90s, and also how we understand a lot of the issues they raise now.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I guess in thinking about this exhibition and Haitian art just in general, you know, how do you think this exhibition or exhibitions like it can really revolutionize how Haitian art and even Haiti are viewed?
You know, I mean, I think the exhibition, which I think is what all good exhibitions should do, raised as many questions as answers. As far as that's concerned, I mean, I think, you know, one of the things that was at the core of our collaboration and working on the show, but also thinking about it, was trying to understand the history of Haitian art as a product of cultural exchange from all over the world, but also these very complicated and uneven histories of exchange that persist to the present day. So, you know, I think the goal in the exhibition, especially with your work on it, was to kind of think about these deep historical ties between New Orleans and Haiti, and also try and understand the history of collaboration between those places in both a positive as well as a really complex and oftentimes quite unequal light.
Hmm. And so I guess what would you say then made this project or exhibition different than others that you've had the chance to curate or be a part of?
Well, first off, probably working with you on it, because I feel like, and one of the things I really want to hear about is, you know, some of the amazing stuff that happened during the exhibition with our educational programs and other events that we did. But, you know, I think one of the things I think that was really powerful for me about that show at that time and at NOMA was that, you know, it was put up in the museum's Great Hall, which is the sort of point of entry and access to the museum. And, you know, NOMA, for those of you who have visited, is this sort of, you know, neoclassical Beaux-Arts building that in many respects doesn't look a lot like the city of New Orleans. And it really felt, in a lot of ways, both through the programming that you were doing around the show, as well as just the presence of these sequined flags that feel like New Orleans and feel like Mardi Gras, and because they feel like New Orleans, they also feel like Haiti. It felt in certain respects like ushering something of the city into the museum.
Yeah, agreed.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you organized and put together around the show?
Yeah. So I think you know, there were numerous engagements that I found like that were really powerful moments in relationship to this show. So I mean, some of them were as, you know, short as going to we went to I took the NOMA pop-up, the mobile museum unit, to the YMCA like kind of family day festival. And with these kind of more short engagements, I would have a walk-up activity that was just called Haiti or New Orleans, and it was pictures of Haiti and pictures of New Orleans. And I think maybe I had like, you know, 12 or 15 images, you know, laminated on the table, and I would just charge people walking up to say, you know, which is which, and whether it was, you know, little children, you know, high school students, adults, you know, elderly, you know, there was always confusion. And so, you know, for them, I think it was a really, I think, great entry point into the exhibition and the discussion, because if you're born and raised here, I mean, one of the biggest things that you take pride in is that you're born and raised here. And it's like, I know my city, you know, so I think it was really interesting to see people, okay, like, well, then why am I confused? And why did I get all of these right? You know, so that in itself as an entryway was a really powerful experience to be able to bring that to different communities in New Orleans and see people respond to this. And then, you know, on the longer term engagements, you know, I did a workshop at particularly two that Academy, and the other was at Travis Hill School. St. Catherine Drexel Prep is a all women, young woman, Catholic high school, African American young women. And, I'm there presenting to them about this exhibition. And, with that, I did the New Orleans or Haiti game also, but particularly focused on the flags in this instance, and said, you know, how many of you, I think it was 30 students. And I was like, how many of you have heard of voodoo? Everybody, majority had. And then I said, well, what do you know about voodoo? And, every time, it was something that was extremely negative.
Mhm.
And so we would talk about from there where those negative perceptions came from. And, and then related that to these flags and what the actual, the Haitian Revolution beginning around the Vodou ceremony, and how it literally, led to the liberation of these people in this place. And so, that, for me was really powerful to share that information in that way, which would then lead to art making, and each student getting to make their own flag that represents their particular passion or identity. And I did the same thing in Travis Hill. And for those who aren't aware, Travis Hill is one of 3 high schools within a prison in the country. So Travis Hill is a high school located within Orange Parish Prison. This school serves young men aged 16 to, I believe, 20, who are awaiting trial, but they are in an adult, prison, and they're, I'm sitting there talking to them about Haiti and freedom and liberation. They're literally sitting there in orange jumpsuits with their ankles chained together. So, but that in itself, there was so much power in that to be able to bring this type of information, but also then engaging in exchange and them sharing about themselves, and them then making art in response to these flags and this idea of liberation. And one particular student, he made a flag that was modeled after the Ogu flag that was was so cool. And it was just like, just seeing how the information resonated with them was really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've been thinking about that show and about a lot of the work and community engagement projects that took place around it in the last days, because I feel like, that idea of exchange and moving between different people and spaces and cultures is something that feels in some ways like it's shutting down at the moment. And I feel like, the model that show presented on a certain level of like reaching across and trying to travel to and understand places that feel far afield is something that like I want us to hold on to at a moment where it feels like people are getting in, both good and also bad ways, like closer and closer to home, right? Um, and I know a lot of what we talked about in working on the show, and a lot of, what took place around various artists and panels that we had for the show was about that idea of like, what does it mean to be a traveler, to reach across cultures, to do these collaborations, and what are some of the stakes of doing so. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your thinking about that, like how you felt when I first approached you about the idea of this project, and how you're thinking about this work and the relationship Tina had to artists in Haiti evolved over the course of working on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like we probably don't even have enough time to talk, but I mean, I think, I think there's a lot, I think the panel was one, that when we're, bringing in people to kind of explore this idea of cultural collaboration versus exchange, versus appropriation. That was something that I think was really important to do. And I think was one of the first things that came to mind for me when you approached me about the show. Because I think, obviously great exhibitions, great artwork, I think, spark dialogue and spark discussion and spark, you know, pushing the collective forward. And I think, to me, that was a big power. One of the main pieces of power of the show to me was that it was creating that much conversation, not only around Haiti, but just like the idea of crossing cultural boundaries and barriers. And, it's something that I continue to sit with, as someone who works in the arts, because I think as artists, as curators, as arts administrators, we're people that are constantly pulling from different sources. Like we are, I think hyper sensitive, hyper empathetic, emotional individuals in this field. And because of that, we're able to derive influence from a large range of sources. So, as somebody, when I'm traveling, wherever I'm traveling, I'm taking in, this culture, these influences, and those may influence something that I do, in the future. But I think the kind of part about it is making sure, like, what's your motive, what's your intention behind that influence. Like, I mean, I look at artists like who I admire, like Sanford Biggers or Hank Willis Thomas, who whose practices are very appropriative, and they don't hide from that. Like, they talk about the appropriative nature of their work, as Black male artists. Sanford has made work of, that's been influenced by his time in Japan, that infuses his, Black male American experience into his work, with his time in Japan, so I think, it's obviously a long conversation, but it's one that I think is rooted in around what is the intent behind the influence that you're deriving and then creating from. And particularly in this case with Tina's work, I saw so much beauty in her collaboration, which attracted me to the story, which attracted me to the work, and then just anything about any work that can also just show a community a different side of itself in such an emphatic way, to me, is that's powerful. So yeah, it's kind of my thinking around it.
So I know that that you just got this amazing grant from the Warhol Foundation to travel around and, in a lot of ways, like, think through a lot of the histories of cultural exchange that were behind the genesis of this show. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, and maybe also, if there's things from working on this show that you're going to bring into that work as well.
Yeah. So yeah, this just got the news like somewhat recently, January. And so this will be a 2-year fellowship to travel and research around Haiti's influence across numerous countries in the Caribbean and the Americas. And so looking at New Orleans as a microcosm for that influence. So, like, as I said, New Orleans was very heavily influenced by Haiti and its people and its culture. But that is one example of, a myriad of examples across the Caribbean and the Americas. So looking at a place like Cuba, which was after Haiti's revolution, I was just reading a book this week that was talking about how during the Haitian Revolution, there were people who were going from New Orleans to Cuba, and then from Cuba to Haiti and back. So there was this constant migration and just constant, just revolving influence. People just traveling because of the proximity. So these were free people of color, these were enslaved people, and that is the case through so many different countries in that area, that region. Looking at a country like Brazil, some research that I've already done has found, in the 1820s, any expression of social revolt was referred to as Haitianismo in different letters and documents and papers. So Haiti gaining its influence just created this cultural wave of, one of fear, because there were all these plantation-based economies that were fearful that there was going to be another Haiti, Cuba, Brazil, Colombia being one. But then even economically, Haiti went from being the world's largest producer of coffee and sugar, and then Cuba took its place, after the revolution, because, the United States at that time and Great Britain started not trading with Haiti anymore. So it's all these different types of effects post-revolution that I'm really excited to dive into, and looking at artists who are making work around these types of themes in these places is one major component of the project. And I think this particular exhibition with Tina just really, I think, rooted me in this kind of concept of one, just the vastly under-discussed influence of a place like Haiti and its impact across not only New Orleans but the world. And so, really this time, taking time to really dive into that research more and read books. Like, there's an amazing book called The Common Wind, which talks about how word of revolution, not just the Haitian revolution, but revolutions in general across the Caribbean spread. Like, so they, it's really making us think differently about, enslaved people. Like, this book is literally talking about, tracing newspaper ads and different, firsthand accounts of enslaved people traveling across the Caribbean and talking about the revolution that's happening. So it's, and like, some of these enslaved people they're talking about are like trilingual people. These are enslaved Africans who were living in places and they're trilingual and just like, spreading word of the revolution, subvertly. It's really powerful stuff. And it's, I think it really can help us change how we've been viewing not only, culture and places like New Orleans or Cuba and its influence, but just like enslaved people, just in general. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about it, as I'm sure you can see.
Well, it's also, I don't know. I feel like part of, another piece of doing a project this is also kind of trying to change the way that we understand the history of art in general, right? That, you're thinking and trying to kind of change the way that you understand the balance of representation and power in museums, that you could do a show like this and have Tina come, but then also have, George Valris come and be at NOMA and talk about his work, and how you kind of can really think about, like you say, like all of the different kinds of debts that our history owes to many of the stories and people that you're talking about that I feel like have not been properly acknowledged or shared.
Yeah, completely agree. We're at time.
No.
But well, yeah. So thank you for this conversation. Started many more, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to have this sort of strange excuse to revisit the show with you. So thanks.
Yeah. Looking forward to the next steps.
Yeah, me too. All right. Take care.
Cool. All right.
Bye.
Bye.